Greetings, I'm Ari. And pay attention because today could mark a turning point in this dramatic 2-year war. After months of fighting, international pressure and behind-the-scenes negotiations, Israel and Hamas have reached an agreement for a ceasefire, which includes something many thought was impossible, the release of all the hostages. Today marks 734 days since this tragedy began, with 913 Israeli soldiers fallen and 48 hostages still in the hands of Hamas. Among them, 20 who are still alive and an as yet unconfirmed number of innocent civilian victims, both Israeli and Gazan, who have lost their lives, as happens in every war. Each number has a face, name, and story. And that's why what's happening now is not just politics, it's deeply human and truly historic. But the word ceasefire does sound good in headlines. The problem is understanding what it really means, because there are questions that everyone is surely asking themselves. When exactly does this ceasefire begin? Under what conditions was it accepted? And who guarantees that it will be upheld? Is it true that they will release all the hostages? And does this mean that the war is over, or is it just stopping for a few days? Those are the questions, and of course many more, that today more than ever need an answer. So if you want to understand what's happening and what could happen in the next 72 hours, stay with me, because I'm going to explain it to you, step by step, without technical jargon, and with the most up-to-date information, at least what is known so far here in Israel. Everything started in the early hours of this Thursday, when President Donald Trump surprised everyone during a press conference in Florida. In the middle of the event, Secretary of State Marco Rubio approached him, handed him a handwritten note, and then whispered something in his ear. It was very clear that something important was happening for the Secretary of State to interrupt a meeting of this magnitude. So, after reading the note and during a pause, in a silence where everyone stopped, Trump looked up and spoke firmly. The negotiations between Israel and Hamas have been successful. That scene, which quickly spread around the world, was the public confirmation of an agreement that had already been quietly taking shape between the United States, Egypt, Qatar, and Israel. Behind the scenes, the diplomatic teams had spent weeks fine-tuning details, drafting terms, and exchanging guarantees. The result was this document, which, if fulfilled, could mark the end of exactly 2 years of war. The ceasefire will begin tonight, this Thursday. At least at the time of making this video, it hasn't materialized. After this vote takes place, the Israeli Defense Forces will begin an orderly deployment toward what is known as the Yellow Line, an agreed internal perimeter that will leave approximately 53% of Gaza's territory under Israeli control, including logistical corridors and security zones around the southern Israeli kibbutzim. Meanwhile, Hamas must provide the final and verified list of the living hostages and the bodies it holds in its possession. Confirmed data shows 20 hostages are alive, and Gaza sources report the group has started gathering them at various locations for transfer. Today, footage recorded from Gaza has been shown where you can see United Nations trucks speeding into Gaza, heading toward the locations, most likely the refugee camps. Provide a list of hostages and move forward with preparations for receiving the hostages. After Israel and the mediators approve the list, the process starts. A deadline of exactly 72 hours for Hamas to hand over all the living hostages at once. Without cameras, without speeches, and under strict supervision by the International Red Cross, the procedure will be silent but meticulous. The hostages will be transferred to the India military base in southern Israel, where military doctors will conduct the first evaluations. Then they will be distributed to different hospitals. At the same time, Israel will release approximately 1,950 Palestinian prisoners, including 250 sentenced to life imprisonment. The Ministry of Justice has reported that the families of the Israeli victims will be notified before each release, and that no kind of public celebration related to those released will be allowed. Throughout this entire process, Israeli drone flights over Gaza will be suspended, a demand from Hamas that was accepted to facilitate the transfers. In coordination with Egypt and Qatar, 5 border crossings will be opened to allow the entry of humanitarian aid, fuel, food, and medicine. It is estimated that between 400 and 600 trucks per day could enter during this initial phase. In addition, a joint force has been established made up of Israel, Egypt, Qatar, and possibly Turkey, whose goal will be to locate the bodies of the hostages that I can never deliver immediately. All of this, the military withdrawal, the release of hostages and prisoners, and the entry of aid, is part of the first phase of the agreement. If it goes as planned, Monday could dawn with Israel at peace, the hostages back, and a new stage of negotiations underway. But if something breaks along the way, if one of the parties doesn't comply, or if an attack happens outside the agreement, everything could fall apart in a matter of hours. So the next 72 hours will literally be a trial by fire. And what happens during them will determine whether this is the beginning of the end of the war or just another pause in a story that still isn't over. Beyond the numbers and political agreements, what truly moves the whole country are the hostages themselves. For 734 days, their names have been on posters, in windows, in prayers. 20 people who have survived the longest collective captivity in Israel's recent history. And now, if everything goes as signed, they could return home in a matter of hours. Israeli army sources say Hamas has started gathering them at 3 sites in Gaza, where group doctors will examine them before handing them over under International Red Cross supervision. From there, a convoy escorted by Egyptian vehicles and Qatari observers will take them to the Rafah border crossing in the south of the Gaza Strip, which borders Egypt. Once they cross the border, the Israeli army will take full control of the operation. With helicopters and ambulances ready to go, they will be taken directly to the REM base in the south of the country. There, a protocol rehearsed for weeks will be activated. Each hostage will be identified, examined, and if their condition allows, transferred to one of the designated hospitals. There, they will surely have their first contact with their loved ones who have been waiting for them for 2 years. The government has asked both Israeli and obviously foreign media who are here in Israel to keep their distance and not to release images of the moment they arrive, to protect their privacy and allow a recovery process without public pressure. The priority now is to stabilize their physical and emotional health, because many of them, according to doctors who participated in previous drills, will arrive in conditions of malnutrition, exhaustion, and severe psychological trauma. We'll see in what condition they hand them over. Never. During the first 48 hours, the hospitals will operate under a closed regime. Only direct family members and authorized personnel will be able to see them. Military doctors and army psychologists, along with civilian specialists, will explain an evaluation protocol that includes medical analysis, immediate treatment, and intensive psychological support. Israel has already established a special rehabilitation center that will begin operating this week to care for the hostages over the coming months. There they will receive medical care, emotional support, and legal advice, especially for those who wish to testify about what they experienced during their captivity. Meanwhile, on the streets, the anticipation is enormous. In Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa, people are preparing to light candles in the squares in honor of those who are returning and also in memory of those who will not come back. Why? Although the exact number of bodies that will be returned has not yet been confirmed, it is known that several of the hostages were killed during the recent bombings in Gaza. The return of the 20 hostages alive does not heal the wound, but it gives the country back something that seemed to have been lost. A small dose of hope. And of course, it is also an encouragement for the rest of the world, for you who are watching us, and especially to the subscribers of this channel, who have always shown a special affection for the whole situation that has happened here in Israel and of course for the hostages. Certainly Israel has many friends there in the West. And while waiting for the moment of their release, the prevailing feeling in Israel is a mix of relief, tension, and silence. Relief because there is finally light at the end of the tunnel, tension because everything still needs to be fulfilled, and silence because everyone knows that the next few hours will be decisive. The release of the hostages could coincide with the end of the Sukkot holiday here in Israel, which is known as the Feast of Tabernacles, a date that for the Jewish people represents the joy of redemption, the protection of the Creator in the midst of the desert, and the hope of a new beginning. And it's hard not to see some symbolism in all of this. Right as a holiday that celebrates light after darkness comes to a close, the country could see the return of those who were held captive for more than 2 years. Alright, now something important. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is a good time to do it. I'll give you a few seconds while I keep talking so you can do it. You just need to hit the subscribe button. If you want to receive direct and uncensored information, you can join the memberships that give you access to the private news group on WhatsApp, where I share material every day. Alright, let's move on to the prisoner exchange, which is undoubtedly the most sensitive part. Israel will release approximately 1,950 Palestinian prisoners, including the 250 who are serving life sentences for murders or attacks against Israeli civilians. The authorities confirmed that none of the prisoners considered high profile will be included in this phase. The Ministry of Justice, in coordination with the Shabak, Israel's internal security service, prepared the final list, which was approved this morning. The agreement includes a clause that expressly prohibits any kind of public celebration in Judea and Samaria during the releases. Something we saw in the previous exchange, and that never really exploded in a particular way on social media. It's also established that those released can't return to Gaza without prior authorization. On the political front, the decision has caused divisions within the Israeli government itself. Ministers like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir have announced that they will vote against the agreement. They argue that releasing so many prisoners weakens Israel's deterrence, and it could be interpreted as a victory for Hamas. Well, obviously these are opinions, so let me know what your opinion is. What do you think not only about Israel releasing such a large number of prisoners, but what do you think about this whole agreement? Will it happen or not? So let me know your opinion there in the comments. Alright. However, sources within the cabinet assure that Netanyahu has enough of a majority to approve the agreement, and that the negative vote from the more hardline sectors will not put the coalition at risk. For now, on the street, the reaction is mixed. On one hand, thousands of Israeli families anxiously await the return of their loved ones. Obviously. But on the other hand, there are those who fear that with these releases, Israel is repeating the cycle that has already been seen in the past, releasing those who later return to bring violence to the Israeli people. And that's a wound that still hurts many people. However, beyond the political tensions and fears, the entire country agrees on something. No price is too high when it comes to recovering the lives of our people, even their bodies. Because in Israel, every life has absolute value. And maybe that's why this moment comes right at the end of Sukkot, when the Jewish people remember that even in the middle of the desert, the Eternal still covers his people with his sukkah, with his tabernacle, protecting them under his shadow. And on the other hand, as expected, in Gaza, the show has already begun. Hamas immediately launched a triumphalist speech. They talk about victory and about having imposed their will. It's not a coincidence. After years of propaganda and struggle, the organization wants to show its people that resisting was worth it. That's the narrative they're trying to establish right now, and in the West, you can bet on it. It won't take long for people in Europe, Spain, France, and, well, countries in Latin America to start copying this, giving Hamas or the Gazans a victory in this whole story, right? Well, we'll see what happens on social media and, of course, in the mainstream media. And the spokespeople for Hamas keep repeating the same script. The agreement is presented as the result of resistance, a way to legitimize Hamas and its people. Any concession in the political arena, Osama Andam, for example, justified that this first phase should be completed in a few days. And they argued that what matters is to achieve an end to the war under conditions that ease the pressure on the Palestinian population. Now, they turn out to be the most condescending toward their population. In practice, that narrative mixes with operational reality. In the last few hours, there have been attempted attacks against Israel Defense Forces positions inside the Strip, incidents that the army quickly neutralized. And they show that, despite the agreement, there are still cells willing to break the truce. Today, the Chief of Staff, Samir, in the Gaza Strip, addressed the soldiers. He told them that thanks to the considerable military pressure, they, the fighters, the soldiers, created the conditions for the return of the hostages. I quote his words, "I see before my eyes the fallen and the wounded in body and soul. This would not have been possible without them. Our work is not finished yet. We will not rest until we see the last of our kidnapped fallen and they are buried, and we guarantee the security of Israel." So, well, for now, Israel is doing its part and never tries to turn the ceasefire into propaganda. In reality, this agreement was signed due to Israeli military pressure and mediators' efforts, not Hamas's strength. And while the world debates who won and who lost, in homes all across Israel, there is only one certainty. No negotiation, no exchange, and no agreement are worth as much as a single life recovered from Israel. We will continue to closely follow what happens in the coming hours, minute by minute. If you haven't done so yet, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Leave me a like, which is really the price for the work I do. And share this video so that more people can understand what's happening here in Israel and in the region. See you in the next update.